tape 5 in the interview with David Mandl, you were describing life in the Canada section and the sorting process.
Yeah. Well, basically, Canada, as I explained, we had to sort out things. Of course, I wouldn't describe it properly because one might get an impression that yes, we got things to eat and we can leisurely just grab it, take it, eat it. Wasn't so. If you could sort of smuggle it in a corner and swallow it in 2 seconds, yes, you could do it. If you were caught, you were beaten. And I mentioned a very interesting thing, that I had a friend who was a supervisor. He was a very helping, as you can see, he helped me help some other people. But it happened so that he was supervising one's work where we were working. And here comes an SS, you know, and he wants to see what's happening. Happened to be, this SS was a so-called Volksdeutsche, which means a German family living in Czechoslovakia. It happens to be that this German guy, SS, medium-sized, very cruel, was working with another guy in the same place who was a Häftling, as a Jew. They worked as mechanics together. And happened so that many times he talked to him, many times, and many times he called him because he was angry for whatever reason and clobbered him almost to death. That was the SS. Who comes in and calls his Vorarbeiter, come out here. Whatever he told him, he wasn't satisfied by the tempo, whatever he told him, and he didn't have a choice. He said, die ganze Gruppe antreten, the whole group, which was 6, 7, 8 people, just line up. And one by one, step up. Next, he said, which was famous, everybody knows it, büge dich, which means go down and hold your ankles. Okay? And I gave you the verdict, 10. 3 was very seldom. 10, 25 was a lot. 50, I don't know whether you could live through. I said 10, and he gave me 10 on my behind. Next. Everything is through. I come in the evening home, and he came, says, listen, I'm sorry. I says, don't worry about it. You got to do it. I mean, should I, after the war, go and say, look here, this is a kill? It's stupid. So you have to know what's right, what's wrong. And a lot of people exaggerate. A lot of people don't know the difference. This is a guy who was very nice, but he wanted to survive, so he became a supervisor. Now, basically, this is what was our job, and every evening, when we went home, there was a, I believe it was Scharführer, I mean whatever rank it is, who was famous. He was limping a little bit because he was in the Russian front, but came back, and he came to this job. And he was very sort of a sixth sense. He was walking from the beginning to the end. Whoever he picked and came out, he was hiding something. Doesn't mean that everybody was hiding. Very few people dared to do it. But anytime he could see on his eyes or a movement, whatever, that he has, and he got beaten, okay, in front of us and beaten. So nobody dared. But we did it in spite, but nobody dared to do it. I was to get...
What types of things would people take out?
What they would take out, they take a little box of sardines. They were hungry, they were dying, it's like sardines, a little bit this, a little bit that, small things. They wanted to eat, they They wanted to maybe share it with somebody. They wanted maybe to throw it over to a sister, or which was it's a long story what you could do and what you couldn't do, and everything was dangerous. So basically, I worked in this group with Stern, okay, Stern. All the time we were together. Wherever I was, he was. Okay, basically. We were working for months and months, and between beatings, dependent, the SS people who were basically circling all the time. Every time maybe it was a different one. Suddenly we knew already that this is bad as hell. This is not as bad, but it's horrible. This is bad, but maybe it doesn't look too much. It doesn't look for it. So we knew when we could do a little bit more. So you had to think and do certain things. They were the dependent. They didn't sleep well, or they weren't happy, or the news from the front was so favorable. Or I remember when there was an attentat on Hitler, and I was running, take a luggage to a different barrack to deposit it there, and he never beat me, this Slovak, the Volksdagen, the SS, never beat me. He says, "Come out here." I started to sweat already, and he didn't even explain why and what. I know that there was, we didn't even know, but something we knew. But he was angry. I didn't know why he was angry. But it was immaterial. He didn't get a drink. He didn't do this. Whatever reason. And he said, 10. Beg dich. I took it. I hold firmly. And I tell you, if you couldn't take it, then you lost it. Because they couldn't stand it if you straightened up in pain. They couldn't stand it if you left your ankle and just tried to protect yourself. Whether it wasn't intended to do it, because your body was dictating. They couldn't stand it. It means you are a chicken, You don't deserve to be. So he called me and he beat me, and I walked away. Okay. One day, I'm getting to a point when they lined us up, and then each one got a number at the 2, and it was done by some people. It was, maybe they were artists some one time, I don't know. I remember it was a young girl, and I went over there. Everybody had to line up and hold their hand like this way. Some people got it here, some people got it here. Depends on certain time, whoever decided they got it here. And the number is 14890, A, initial A, 14819. And what happened, if for some reason sometimes you had a job that you had to go out from the lager, and there was a gate, and the SS came with a clipboard, and because we had to go and stand, still, and show it to him and say in German, Häftling number 14819 gemeldet sich. And he marked it down, out. So we had to, when he went out, he was reporting, and when we came out, checked off, we came back. We went to the main street, we still were in Auschwitz, okay. I remember once, and then we were talking about, we had a tattoo that how we left, okay. I remember once, and again, how did I get such a job to go out? There was a guy from Czechoslovakia who was there for 2 years, an old-timer. Nobody knew why he's alive. He was lucky, accident. Call it anything that you want to. He knew that I'm from Slovakia. He says, come on, let's go. You have to pick up some numbers. I was new. We were able sometimes to smuggle something to maybe a sister, maybe a brother, maybe somebody, wherever we went to pick up something, Of course, no use to take, it was dangerous. So what we did, we had a little box, wooden box, small box, and put these goodies in it, and we put 2 nails. So you couldn't see the wagon, you couldn't see there is under it anything, So here we go. There was one horse, and I was naive. I went I was sitting on a wagon, to empty, and we went, and here we go, and suddenly SS halt, go down. Looks us over, was Specs. We knew already that we were hoping that he's not going to discover anything, and he marked down everybody's number. Now that was terrible. If an SS marked your number, that was worse than he would shot you right away. I'll tell you why. He was looking, first of all, how dare you to ride? How comes you are not running after it? And he gave us a beating. Well, each one got, and they were very specialists. It was just boom. They had a special way. They took you this one here, your teeth came out, So, I mean, okay, literally speaking. So then he looks around, looks under, he takes his foot, boom, this comes off, and everything is there, a pair of ladies' shoes, a sardine, and this and that. Then he became red in the face. And maybe that was the time when he took our number, because normally he wouldn't take, that was something. Okay. We were so scared because we heard stories, not stories of people who experienced it, because if you were called, luckily, this guy who came with us and Czechoslovakia he said that this is not the worst guy yet. So we didn't know. We were waiting for 2 or 3 days. We couldn't sleep. They didn't call us. Normally when you called you, they played a game with you. They says they play and they kicked you, whatever. Then you were.
What type of games did they play?
They were standing in a circle and then kicked you and shoved you and beat you. That was just the beginning. And then they said, you get 10 days or whatever. They locked you in a place that you couldn't stand straight. But at the same time, you couldn't sit down either. So you were not sitting, not standing. Now we're talking about days. We're talking about 10 minutes, 10 seconds. That's you can get crazy. And this is one of the punishments. And I'm not going to go some more punishment because, thanks God, I didn't go through with this punishment.
You had this punishment?
This, no, I only know from people who got the punishment and came out, okay, firsthand. I mean, I didn't get it. I didn't, because I was, okay, lucky. But you can check it. It's true. Okay. Basically, at the moment, it's coming too close to November, whatever. Seems to me the Russian front, and we didn't know absolutely what day, what holiday, Sunday, Monday. One day was as another day. And obviously, they didn't do so well. They felt that they will have to go back to Germany because the Russian front wasn't so good. So they started to liquidate Auschwitz first, destroying all the evidence. It was impossible, but they're trying to. They took the crematoriums and blew it up. They dug up some places and burned some more corpses. They tried to do every evidence. They were trying to redo it somehow. We went out early in the morning to go to work. Instead of work, we were marched to the showers. Okay. By the way, I have to tell you, because in the meantime I forgot, that we were in that position, we were very close to the shower. So we were privileged after the work every day to take a shower. To take a shower, we went there, a group of people from there, and that was the deal. You take a shower, the last 3 or 6 people, because it's a huge place, will get blankets and will sweep it up. You soak it up with a blanket. You pull 2 people and soak it up. Nobody wanted to be the last one because it was a killer, you know. So we went in, we jumped in, we did it very fast, and we came out. One day we come in, and we ready to leave when we hear Achtung, you know. We stood still, and who walks in? Dr. Mengele. They had some big officials coming out of town. It might have been Hitler's friends. I wouldn't say it. I remember it. I don't say it. But Mengele came. We were all looking to nothing because you couldn't look in his eyes or anything. And he passed by and was talking and looking, and somebody's explaining this is whatever sound, whatever it is. And suddenly he stops, looks at me. I'm looking down. I'm trembling inside, you know. And he says, you know, Ungare, Hungarian. How did he know? I had a Magen David, and I had a U. They could recognize somebody from Hungary, from Netherlands, from Belgium, wherever. They knew who you are. You are Jewish. You are a political or not. You know, you had different colors. And he said, whether he was 100%, you know, himself, or he made a little bit of a drink, but he came close to me enough with a finger pointed out, and he just said, Ungari, Magyar, in Hungarian, Hungary. He was in a mood. He was in a mood to do something else. He was luckily turned around, you know, and I felt, I'm telling you, okay, I feel it like today. And you might say it was a terrible experience. It looks like innocent, nothing. Yeah.
Did you know people who had had more direct contact with Mengele and what it would mean?
Contact with Mengele wasn't good because it either was, when he was selecting, you know, that was bad news. He had people who they worked with him as doctors. He had some people worked with him maybe for a secretary, who knows. I don't know of anybody who really had a direct contact. I knew when I was in this Canada that across I could see whether it was what lager, it was like a little hospital where the experiments were going on. And I knew somebody there. In order to send a message, a little package to throw with big trepidation and danger, you had to have a system. You had to have somebody who you knew there, and this guy would take this little package that was thrown with a stone, tied it, had to go to the next one and throw it to somebody that he knew, contact, etc., until he got to the destination. Why did they do it? Because everybody took off a little bit whatever was sent, a share. That was the rule. I happen to know two people from the city of Košice. They were twins, and their twins were there for experimentation. Many times we were hollering at each other when we felt it's safe to do it, and I got news, and he was telling me that today, you know, didn't mention Mengele, you know, and he went for treatment, he got some shots or whatever. So he was telling me. I also have seen the small people, now the dwarfs, okay? There were a family of dwarfs over there that Mengele was experimenting. I didn't know them in person, I have seen them around, but they were in touch, and eventually they survived in Israel, and understand they perhaps wrote about it, but it's something else. But that's my experience. At this point, one day we were marching out to work. Instead of going to work, we went to the bath, and again took the bath, took away everything that we had, wherever they called it organized. So not stealing, but organized from the government. You know, if you had a pair of socks, you organized it. You didn't steal it, you didn't buy it, you know, you organized it. So whatever we organized with sweat and blood, that went up, you know, finished. We didn't have it, didn't own it. While we were waiting there, on the other side, again looking like shaven and with the clothing wasn't so, a little bit improved. We did it. This Stern, who was working with me, the last time we were working, a couple of weeks earlier, they came for him because they asked who is a doctor. He didn't volunteer. But he was told by maybe a Vorarbeiter manager, yes, we have a doctor here. And they took him in a room where medication came. Medication was more valuable than gold, diamond, whatever you could imagine. That was more valuable. So they put eventually 2 guards to watch him, how he's assorting it, where he puts it, how is it, and he could not. He searched him and he went, he couldn't take anything out. This Dr. Stern, I have to tell you the story before we're leaving Auschwitz. One day I couldn't go to work because my knees were all, I couldn't work because swollen. Actually on a side, I can't imagine it today. They're completely swollen. I couldn't walk. If you don't walk, you are not alive. You cannot walk. You got to be on the Appellplatz when they're counting the. So eventually, my friend, I was complaining, he says, let me talk to Henyek. So they could keep 1 or 2 days a person there under supervision. He was counted and the count was given to somebody else. So it came out, was okay. So kept me a couple of days over inside, so we didn't have to go out to work. Stern, during the day, while he was working with medication already, came in and stole some medication. I don't know how he dared to do it. He found a little bit of a pot. He made a little bit fire, and he boiled a little bit water for the shot, you know, and he gave me shots. So I felt he saved my life. Now he felt I saved his life. This Stern, when we were ready to go, coming out the other side under the pretense that he goes somewhere to take some water. He was trying to get to me to maybe to smuggle something for me for the road. I can imagine how much, it was a small guy, how much. He was stopped by an SS. I says, no, you cannot go there. He wasn't beaten or anything, just anyway. But I remember it. Okay. November.
Before you tell me about
Yeah.
leaving Auschwitz,
Yeah.
tell me what you ate and
Uh,
the
our-
food
uh,
process.
Auschwitz, the food was, we still had to eat the regular food. None of the places, except one place, as far as I know, had a kitchen. So these places, they have to bring, maybe they have the kitchen, but where I was in Canada, the commando, they didn't have a kitchen. So they have to bring it from far away, and I am not sure where the kitchen was, whether it was on the premises or somewhere else. So they had to schlep it, they had to bring it, drag it. And for that, you needed healthy 2 or 4 people for each. It's heavy, you know. And basically, I guess, if you were able to do it, you might have gotten a little bit extra portion, you know. That was maybe the incentive. So they dragged it. In the morning, we got coffee, tea, which didn't look like tea. It was like a little bit of a color. And on the bottom, they had some kind of leaves. I don't know what it was. Most people drank a little bit. Then they washed themselves a little bit, the face, because there was, you know, they had places where you could wash them, but it wasn't safe to go there. They had a black with bathrooms, you know, that you could go and whatever you have to do, you could relieve yourself. But it was so fast that it didn't give you time. If you are angry, you got more beating there than any other place. People avoided it. But how they could do it, I don't know myself. And I don't remember where, what and how. But basically, the food that was in the morning, so that was zilch because, but it was a little bit of a liquid. And then they gave us once also the Dörgemüse, which was something, a mixture of something that normally give it to the cows and to the animals, you know, and they cooked it and they put a little bit potatoes. Some people couldn't eat it, but you know, when you get to the point that you know there is nothing else, even if you don't like, you got to swallow it. I don't care what it was, how it tasted. I said I got to eat it, and I ate it. Now that we were able to get a little bit here, a little bit there, it helped a lot, of course. You know, but basically on the regular places were the same, but they didn't have the advantage of having an extra something, even it was very, very dangerous, and most of the food was rotten, spoiled after 3, 4, 6 weeks out on the sun, whatever it was, you know, unless it was a sardine in a, you know, you could, a salami or whatever, it was all green. You could peel it off. I mean, you know, certain things, we ate whatever we could, but again, it was dangerous. We wanted to help something, it was another story. And we did it many times. As a matter of fact, Stern, I have to tell you about Stern, he had a nephew, and he says, let's give this is a young boy, by miracle he survived, let's send, and we did, many times we did send him, and most of the time he got it. And one day we were told that he is in a barrack that is supposed to be next day gassed, all these young kids. By error they were left over, you know, and we didn't know what to do. And we once, and that right away, we went and we took some more expensive stuff that was in, you know, and we did send it, believe me or not. And one time we got him out. Okay, how? Don't ask me. But finally, he didn't survive. He repeated. So that's the story as far as Auschwitz is concerned, I believe, unless...
Did you ever observe any resistance?
In Auschwitz, I did. Many times we were ordered out to escort it on outside, not inside, outside. I remember very close before leaving Auschwitz, they put us in an empty space next to the fence, main road, and we had to pick up, again, luggages or rucksack, whatever, bring it to this circle, whatever. We open up, and I remember I was opening a luggage, and I hear is a thermos, you know, a big thermos. So I shake it, you know. We were already experienced, you know. I'm shaking it. I tried it, open it, but it doesn't open. Finally, I open it up. I unscrew it, and I most probably got red in my face. Wrapped around were Deutsches Marks. So oh my God, what I'm supposed to do? If I take it and I catch me, that's the end of it. Should I turn it in? And that moment, I mean, it's very, very unusual to believe it, you know, but that moment, a new transport arrived. Women, children. Here is a mother looks to a grand.
You need to stop and change.
Okay, fine. Okay.
page 6 in the interview with David Mandl. You were describing the incident with the thermos.
Mhm. Yes. Well, basically, it was a strange coincidence. I opened the thermos, and didn't happen often to. I opened it up. It was hard to open, and I discovered there are a bunch of paper money, Deutsche Marks. I didn't know what should I do. Should I put it in my pocket? Should I hide it? Should I turn it in? Are they going to see me? While I was debating, there was a commotion. First of all, a new transport was marching by with, assuming young mother holding a child on each side, I would say age 5, 4, 5, 6, nicely dressed, and the whole group were marching for a shower. What they didn't know, they are marching to the gas chambers. And I'm assuming, and I know, that after 1 or 2 hours later, they weren't here anymore. They went to the process. By the way, while this was happening, there was a commotion. There was a running, there was a hollering. Suddenly, there was an explosion, and what we observed right from through the fence, that German SS were running. There was a crematorium nearby, and it was in flames. And they were running and shouting, and in a couple of minutes, SS even on horses came by, and what happened actually is that the group that worked over there, by the way, at that moment, we right away were stopped, and we had to go all on the Appellplatz, where we normally are being counted twice a day. And they put on the corners a machine gun, so we shouldn't have some other ideas. In the meantime, what I also didn't mention, that even in Commando Canada, I wasn't there long enough, but in a commando where special group, where they worked with burning, etc., this group every 6 months, or perhaps every 5 months.
Burning what?
The group, they were working and taking out the dead people, taking them to the crematorium. There was a group that was also a job, okay? And every 6 months, automatically they were exchanged. I knew it, that they will be gassed. And it was the time for such a change. As a matter of fact, eventually I didn't know that applied also maybe on where I was. Whether we cared or we didn't care, we cared for 1 second, 1 day, 1 minute. I was looking for a word because I forgot that the group was called Sonderkommando. I suddenly don't remember. Special group. They called Sonderkommando. They knew that they will be annihilated, taken care of next day. There was a underground, and basically I didn't know officially of an underground. I knew only that somebody, the Chenyek, came to me and he was telling me, we are planning to get out from here, to get out. We'll be in touch. You can tell it only to one person, nobody else. You cannot tell it to anybody else. And I told it to Stern. And Stern, I know, told it, I wasn't present, to tell it to one of his friends, and so on and so on. So it was, something was brewing, something was cooking that never came to materialize in reality in a big way. Now these people knew, they were already preparing for something bigger, but the time came to do it, whatever they had to do, and they burned the crematorium. They also had some revolvers to shoot back. And then, when it was burning, they could escape. Unfortunately, each one was caught and executed.
Did you observe the execution?
No, I didn't observe, but basically, whenever, hardly anybody could escape from Auschwitz. Hardly anybody. If I remember, they escaped, and I have seen it. If anybody escaped, actually, there were watchmen, SS, around perimeter, but when they actually were working outside, then they had a so-called, they called it the kete, you know, they had some soldiers going outside and being outside of the perimeter, you know, not only just inside while somebody was working out. They never pulled it back until such time the count didn't come out, you know, exactly. Now, if somebody escaped, the count wasn't correct. So we had to stand until such time they found the person, until it, you know, whether it was a day or two, it didn't matter. Now, we were standing for 2 days, and they brought the guy back, and then there was an execution, and a couple of days later, we had to come and watch it, and they came, 2 of them, each one had a big sign, Ich bin zurück, I'm back again, whatever in such sense. And they have to take these guys, and they said, you stand opposite and start a fight, beat each other. They didn't want to do it. They were beaten. So it was a big, big mess. Finally, they tried to beat each other. They couldn't, and they were hanged. Auschwitz.
Is there anything else you
well,
want to tell me about Auschwitz before we move on?
About Auschwitz, basically I have to go back because how to survive, I remember that time that I was reading some books that we got in Garan in Hungary in the concentration camp from the psychiatrist, and he said at that time, I remember, that if you don't feel right and you want to feel better, so every evening, every night, go and lay down, stretch out, empty your mind, believe it or not, try to believe it and say 10 times, I feel every day better and better. Now, I did it in Auschwitz. I don't know whether it helped it, but I did it. So that I just wanted to mention it also. As far as my cousin Shamu, who, when he came in, I marked him down on a list, and I was in touch with him. Before I left, where I was in a position of a Schreiber, a scribe, I went to see him before I left. And I took off this little band which says Schreiber, and I put it on his arm, and I said, are you going to continue, and you should be all right. And he was okay all the time. As a matter of fact, most probably did better than I did. That's the story. And I met him later on, but I can talk about it later on.
So where did you go after Auschwitz?
So we were put on a train, and we were taken to Germany. They were liquidating.
When was this?
Okay, it was in November. They were really liquidating and liquidating, but it was a lot to liquidate. And basically, at later time, they didn't have trains. You know, they weren't perhaps so lucky. So it was winter later on, and they marched out everybody, and very few survived. That was the march of death, and it was terrible. And I know people who went through, and later I myself went through such an experience. Now, we went with a train and we came to a place by the name of Ohrdruf. Ohrdruf, okay? And we went actually via, maybe in transit somehow, we stopped or wherever we came first before we went to Ohrdruf. We stopped for a week, for a couple of days at Oranienburg, which might have been close to Sachsenhausen, so I cannot separate it anymore. So I'm saying Oranienburg. In Oranienburg, we had nothing else to do, just to be counted, and we were able to stay in the barracks. We were extremely clean barracks, much smaller, much nicer, and it was spotless. And I noticed, because many times there are various people there, and we had some signs that we recognized that were homosexuals. And I'd never met a homosexual there. Basically, when I came into one of these barracks in Oranienburg, or perhaps Sachsenhausen, I'm not making it up, but whatever it is, I found it strange to see that there was a woman there. But I was told that this is not a woman, but basically it is a man who is dressed as a woman, and they play it out. And it was the first time and only time that I really met with a homosexual. Another incident over there, and then we left over there, was that we were, as always, extremely hungry. And there was lunchtime, whatever, food was brought, and we were lined up to go to eat. And some people couldn't hold back. They wanted to push. They wanted to be the first one, second one. And one SS who was standing by, he was waiting for such an occasion. You two, come here. And he had we had one soup here and another soup for another group. And he took this one guy, and he says, bend down, and took his head, and he put his head in this very hot food and kept him until he was gone. Took him out. I have seen it. It happened. Wasn't anything unusual. It was nothing unusual. I don't believe that we noticed it, but we were very skeptical because we knew that it can happen. At that point, we left, and we were taken really to Ohrdruf. Okay. Arriving to Ohrdruf wasn't a usual concentration camp. It used to be maybe scouts or Jugend, I mean the military youngsters over there, Hitlerjugend, something like that. Hitlerjugend. It was an empty camp, it's small, neat, but it was turned a camp right now. So the same rules, same conditions. It wasn't better, it was worse, if it could be worse. But the rules didn't change. The rules didn't change. Since there wasn't an established management, as we came, so actually there were some position of, doesn't mean if you were a manager somewhere else, Vorarbeiter, sometimes they say capo, whatever, doesn't mean that you continue to be that one. I knew a couple people. One was, his name is Heinz. He was a musician. He was selected. He was born in Berlin. He was selected to play in the orchestra in Auschwitz. And he was there for a long time playing music while they were marching out and marching in. Occasionally, the SS allowed a performance which was strange for them to go to different places. And one day visited, and I knew the Heinz before, because sometimes we were sending through him somewhere else. When he came, while he was playing, I dared to take his fiddle, violin case, and ran secretly to a place where I knew I have a little bit food, filled it up, put it in, put it down. When he left, he took it along. The violin was held in his hand. When we came on the train, I have seen him. I said, Hans, what you doing? We came over there. He, Ordrup, he had a friend who was also a Berliner, and he was go-getter, you know, and he got a position. And he took Hans first. He sent him in the kitchen to peel potatoes, which you might say is degrading. It was heaven, peel potatoes. Maybe eat the peels, it was heaven. Okay. And after a while, he became also who actually was controlling some jobs and assigning groups to certain jobs. And I knew about it, but I was working and was taken out every day, and it was winter, remember, it was winter, close to winter, because November, December, January we were there. And I basically, after 4 weeks, we were, in the morning, it was wake up time, 4 or 5, maybe 5 o'clock. We had to go out on the Appellplatz, and we had to be counted. We had to be counted, recounted until it was 100%. It took an hour, hour and a half, whatever it took. And we were outside, whether it was snowing, whether it was how many degrees, doesn't matter. Shivering, you have to understand. People didn't have socks, didn't have underwear, didn't have shirts. Some didn't have even shoes. The snow, going without shoes, it's tough. Some didn't have shoes. So we were taken. If the count came out, there were some trucks waiting on the side, and we got a command, let's go. We ran to the trucks. To get on the truck, not to climb and struggle, to get a better position, to be in the middle rather on the side, because if you are in the middle, you're protected from the cutting wind. In the winter, you couldn't stand it. It cut your face. And if you are on the side, the German trucks were such that the siding was maybe just a foot. It wasn't that you can hold on to it. You couldn't hold on to it. So when the truck was moving, and you had to leave space in the back empty for the SS to make sure that there's a machine gun and we don't get different ideas. So here we're going, whether it was 15 minutes, whether it was an hour, I don't know. We were shivering, whether it was a sign, zum Essen, or some, there is another town which I remembered, I don't know, but basically we arrived to the site where we were taken over by many SS guards, and we also civilian managers who were also belonging to the Nazi party, and who their aim was also to build as fast as possible. To build I'm sorry, we came there was a big project, most probably an underground factory for V1 missile factory, whatever it was. We didn't see the missiles, but it was a tremendous project. We had to clear first the grounds, and we didn't have the strength. We were shivering. So you had a choice to work, get a little bit warm, but you didn't have the strength. So what are you doing? We worked with cement. If you picked up the cement, fine, heavy, you took it, you opened it up, you emptied it, you were not allowed to take this paper, this dirty cement paper, and wrap it around under your pants to not to feel the wind, because if they found it, they beat you to death. So we weren't allowed to that wasn't the purpose. The purpose was to work and to die. So we worked very hard. As a matter of fact, and I'm coming back to again Auschwitz, I asked one of these Henyek's friends, who came from the jail. He was there 3 years. How did you survive Auschwitz and anything else? So he explains it to me in Yiddish. Listen to me. You go out to work. Don't work only with your eyes. You watch the guys, they're watching you. In a minute they turn around, then you work. Remember, and this is what I did. I was working very good. And remember, I went through some concentration before. So physically, I knew the motions, Some people have two left hands because they never did it. And it happened to me once that an SS came and brought me a little bit food. And then he said, you see this guy there? This guy is producing. And you Schweine, and he was cussing him out. No, I wasn't laughing. I was trying to survive the best way I can. I'm just trying to do this little incident. So we were there, and in the evening, we had, again, to film, and waited for the trucks, shivering. We jumped in the truck the same way. However, we had to drag back the dead people every day, and there were plenty of them, because they have to be counted. They have to be counted. If they're not counted, you cannot go to sleep. So we brought it in. It was counting and counting and counting. Came out. We got our meager portions. We collapsed, and we had over there bunk bed, which may be 30 inches, 32 inches, for two. Now you have to understand, you were supposed to take off your shoes at least. You were not allowed to sleep with shoes. Nobody took his shoes off. Everybody's afraid somebody's going to steal it. It was muddy, it was snowy, it was wet. I took off my shoes, I put it as my pillow, and I was watching it. I didn't know when I have to run to the bathroom, barefoot, just fast, because actually we had to go quite often. It was cold, and I came to the sort of a bathroom. It was a puddle because everything was overflowing. It was pleasant. Basically, and I slept it. Many times what happened that every day you slept with somebody. It wasn't an affair. Next day you slept with somebody else because the guy didn't come back. I remember a guy that happened to know him before from I don't know where. He happened to be in Hungary a young rabbi. He was the finest person I ever met in my life. He was, no matter what conditions. We happened to be so that for a while we weren't separated. Then suddenly he disappeared, didn't come back. I didn't know what happened. One day I'm coming back and I threw this Heinz. I went once to him. It was a little bit later. Heinz, I can't do it. I feel I just can't go out. So he says, next day when we come out, just stay there, don't move. Let me see what and how. And he pushed me in a place for a week only, where was that was a shower building, a small building, and our job was to go there, 5 people, and just keep it clean and wait, maybe somebody will come. Nobody came. So that was to come in a steamy place. Can't imagine how to describe it. It happened so that I was maybe perhaps we are 2 Jewish people, the rest were Russian POWs, prisoners of war, Russians in Germany. We were also together in Ohrdruf. Okay? Now, obviously, we had a good job. And there is another incident I have to tell you which is connected. Before then, because I was jumping, it happened so that I came back from work. I have to come back to the rabbi, I'm sorry. Came back from work and I knew that I have fever, that I cannot do it. So I went to whom? To Hans. And he had a helper. He says, take this man to the Russian Krankenhaus, okay, which was a little hospital. There was nothing there, a couple beds. So he brings me over officially. This is here, take him in. I come there, there's all POWs. The doctor, the Russian doctor, tells me, go out in the hall, which was next to the door. It was the same if you would have said to me, go out and freeze to death and take a shower. I had a fever, fine. I go out naked and try to open the water, and I just put a little bit of water and run back. I did it. I says, fine. You see, there is an empty space. Go there. I go there. There's another guy. We sleep together, naked, and suddenly he starts to shivering, jumping. So he was epileptic. I was there for a while. Again, comes back to Hans. A couple of days. How long they can do it? He sent me an extra little bit food. Finally, I am discharged from there. I get different clothes. Everything was taken away again. It's crazy. I get shoes, wooden shoes. You can't walk in it. No socks. Where do I go? Hans. I said, look here. I have to go out to work. I got a pants. I'm telling you, it was smelling. I couldn't stand it, even if I wasn't sensitive. Here comes Hans. He said, I tell you what. He takes off his shoes, gives it to me. He was a small guy, a foot, I mean, maybe up to here. And the shoes are smaller size. But I don't care. I have to squeeze myself in. So my toes are like this. I take it, and I go out to work. So this is what happened. So basically, I'm saying I came out from there, and I went to work, and basically, I know I was trying to tell you about something else which connected.
The rabbi.
Okay. Yeah, suddenly I come back, and I'm sick, and I meet in the entrance this rabbi coming from a different group. And I was actually in a different group. It was a potato group where we had to load potatoes. It's also a good group. 1 second. And we were waiting for a truck, load the potatoes, waiting an hour, was good. And we were smuggling potatoes. We cut out the pocket and we left it down in a little coat. And I come here and I said, he wasn't anymore sleeping in the same because he was transferred to a different place. I said, here is the potato, trying to force it on him. He says, I don't want it. I'm not taking it. I'm not taking it. He didn't take it. That would never happen in a million years with anybody else.
You need to stop and change.
Okay. And
Take 7 in the interview with David Mandl. Is there anything else about Ohrdruf that you would like to tell me?
yes, I do have to tell about a short episode story. I was talking about Shamu, a cousin of mine, I really owe a lot to their families, extraordinary people, but especially Shamu, because we were in touch all the time I was in Auschwitz. We were in touch. We knew that we are alive, each other, and we had a contact. Strangely, by sort of a miracle, he wound up at the same time going to the same train, different location on the train. So when we arrived at Ordruf, inside Ordruf, I have seen his face, and we hugged, and we were very, very happy. And the first thing what he asked me, because I came from Canada, were you able to put some gold in your shoes? Which was ridiculous, because everything was exchanged, and I really wasn't lucky enough to really bring anything extra that I could trade, if he could trade anything at all. He was very happy to see me. I was very happy to see him. The problem was that we did not go in the same group to work. We were different places. I went to work, and it was outside. It was rough, unbelievable rough. Obviously, he had a tough time to stay alive, because any time in the evening he was sort of complaining, almost crying, "They are beating me." I said, "Shamu, listen to me. I was told from one guy, do what I'm doing, trying to do, work, but only when you have to, and watch your guy who is watching you. Maybe you can get away. Maybe it will help you." I didn't know what else to do. He kept on coming. In the meantime, we had lice, and we had any disease that you can imagine connected to lice. And I became sort of scratching myself all over, and there was no medication there. So I said to Shamu, and he was the one who was the weaker, I says, "Look here, I have a problem. I don't know what to do." He says, "Let me go to," there was a little room with a doctor or nurse. "Let me see." And he was standing in line, because I couldn't. I was, and he brought me a black something, and I put it on myself, and luckily it helped. But it was very smelly, and it was smelly, and it was like honey, But the main thing, it helped. So he was helping me a lot. In the meantime, when I brought some potatoes home, we tried to cook it, and I certainly gave him at least a half. So he was telling me, as long as I can come back and I can see that you are here, it keeps me alive. So when basically one day when we came back from work, we didn't go back to the same place, to the same block or barrack, but they took us to a barrack which was a transition barrack. We knew that we were locked in. We knew that something will happen. We couldn't leave any messages. That was it. Next morning, actually, we were taken to a place. I don't know how to spell it. I don't know where it is. It's called Krawinkel. And this Krawinkel seems to me was a huge, huge military site, because we were actually sleeping in military bunkers, small, maybe each bunker, very low. It's like a tent, but made from reinforced concrete, and maybe a dozen people maximum. And we had some beds, no mattresses naturally, but that was, it seems to me, a military establishment.
When was this that you were
That Krawinkel approximately, that was close to, I would say, end of 1944, maybe starting January, something like that, because it was bitter winter. It was just unbelievable. Here, we continued the same thing. As a matter of fact, strangely enough, that was already a place where, when we were marching out, they had a very small orchestra, maybe only 4 or 5 people against what they had, maybe 20, 30, 40 people in Auschwitz. Basically, we went out, we came back, conditions were terrible. We always thought this is the worst, and that was bad, very bad. We had to go out, the same site, similar sites, not the same place, and we continued. And the purpose of the Germans were, let's bring a group, let's use them as fast and get out whatever we can. Let's dump them and rotate some others. And this is rotation after rotation after rotation.
Were you with Heinz and your cousin?
No. Heinz stayed because he was at a position. No, the cousin could come because they took me straight from the work. I couldn't leave a message. Even I could, they wouldn't let him in. So it was, this is when I lost him, and this is where was his end, because it's all I can imagine. So I'm saying that he's died in Ordru. Basically, we worked very hard, naturally, beatings. I know that one day we went to work, and they changed certain jobs and sites, and we went to a site which was like a mountain, and small stones, you know, they were coming down by somebody exploding, and the stone came down, and my job was came a German manager and said, listen to me, take the shovel and you take it from here and you throw it as far as you can over there, okay? And then somebody will come and do whatever. I'm doing as I was being told. And I never made too many mistakes in a concentration camp. I was also told, again, coming back again, that the same guy told me, not only watch it, but when you march, you always stay in the middle, never on the side. Don't be on the end, don't be on the front, always in the middle. So we were actually working, and I never never talked, never said yes, no, I just did it, and just as soon I disappeared, I didn't want to be myself. Suddenly an SS comes with a stick, with a rank, and he looks, and he's like a wild animal. He doesn't like the tempo, you know, and he looks at me, and I didn't look at anybody, and I'm doing my job. I said, stop. And he tells me, "Bück dich," and starts beating me. He didn't tell me the verdict even, 10, 20, 100, nothing, and keeps on beating me. I made a mistake. I couldn't stand it because I was only bone and skin at that time, you know. He was hitting my bone. I had to a little bit sort of straighten out. I couldn't help it. And he says, "What?" And he kept on beating me all over, my hands, my head. Somehow he broke his stick. And I said, oh my God, I already couldn't stand on my feet. He was running, he took an axe, believe me or not. He went to the forest and he cut a small tree, a branch of a tree. He made a heavy something, you know, came back, and he kept on beating on me. Suddenly there was a whistle, end of the work. He had to run because he was responsible of going to. I was saved. I couldn't walk. 2 people were supporting me. And we came in to this bunker there, and older people were there. I said, I'm going to complain. Who am I going to complain? I couldn't lay down. I couldn't sit down. I couldn't do anything. But I survived. So that was an incident that and the reason is because when I straightened out I said to him, because I was trying to be reasoned, which I made a huge, huge mistake. I said, the manager instructed me, with all the respect, to do it. So he says, what? You know, I am talking to him, and it made him so mad. He was almost going crazy, and I almost paid with my life. So anyway, we went back, and this is Ordruf, and one day.
Krawinkel?
Oh, I'm sorry, Krawinkel. I'm sorry. We are in Krawinkel, and one day we going to work. They never told you anything. We're working, and we go to the gate, and we look at each other. What's going on? Because normally we were taken, with the trucks, and we're going to the gate. The gate opens up. They have some provisions. Each of us gets a portion for 2 days. So we're looking at for 2 days. Never happened before. We're marching out from Krawinkel, and I see that in front of me, there, as far as I can see, in front of me, the Häftlinge, which are the concentration camp, working in front of me and taking the space of the whole width of a road, not just marching 5 and 5, but whatever, as far as they can, spreading out, as far as I can see, they are walking. So we come out, we take our bread, I took my bread, and put it under my shirt, okay, and I'm marching, trying to hold it or whatever. For a while, and I will have to at one point go back for a minute. Let me do this right now. Before, a couple of days before, I was actually, after the beating or not beating, I had some boils, from not eating, from whatever. And there was a doctor, but they didn't have medication. And I went to the doctor finally, didn't want to go to the doctor, and he cut it open. No, nothing else. Cut it open. It was a doctor from Czechoslovakia. I didn't know that at the time. His job was also, once in a while, once a week, once in 2 weeks, to look over everybody naked, and if somebody was absolutely just nothing but skin and bone, he had to send him the other direction, which was in a special barrack, where no beds, but only straw. It was winter, remember? Taking away the clothing, lay down, they got the half the portion, which the one wasn't much, okay? And they were there until very soon they were finished. So a couple of days earlier, we have such an inspection, and I'm in a line, believe me, it's true. I'm in a line, I'm coming, I'm looking at the doctor, he looks at me. The crucial thing was turn around. They wanted to see your behind. If there was no behind, you didn't see the difference, they were finished. So he says, looks at me once more, and goes this way, to the barrack. I go, he calls me back. I said, let me ask you a question. Your face is familiar. Are you the brother of Zoltan Mandl? I said, I am. I said, but I never met you. He says, I never was in your city, but I went to the university with your brother, and I somehow recognize you. Go on the other side. Story? True? Yes, true. So basically we were marching. So you can imagine how much strength did I have. We were marching for 2 days. And one night we spent, I will tell you in a minute, marching. In the beginning, on a side, they were SS, well-fed, and they had helpers, the vicious dogs. They were the helpers. Well-fed, each one had supplies of food, extra food. Then they grabbed somebody next to him, he carried for me, kept an eye on him, you know. And they were also, after a while, some other SS came, and they didn't have to continue the march, not, you know, to the end. So here we're marching and marching and marching, and the longer we're marching, the difficult it's get. You look in front, don't see end of it. You look back, you don't see end of it. Suddenly, at one point, some people have to. You can march if you have people marching for half a mile or a mile. So if you slow down, it takes a long time until you get to the end. But when you get to the end, you have two choices. To keep on going, but if you don't have strength, you sit down. And when you sit down and you stare, and you don't know at what you stare, the SS comes to you and gives you a bullet. Very efficient, no waste. Or if he wants to have fun, first he tells the dog, go and get a bite. And he does it. So we're marching, and you hear shots. In the beginning you didn't hear shots. And you see barking, and it's growling, you know. And we continue, and we continue. And we don't know where our next step is going to come from. I call it the death march, okay? And I was sarcastic, I said in March, end of March, so, okay. So we're going and going, and I really don't know how long I can do. The worst thing what I could have done, that they let us once or twice to sit down. Because once you sit down, a lot of people couldn't get up, could not get up. So I'm marching and marching and marching. Anyway, we come and march, and it's getting darker, okay? It's getting darker, and you can hardly see, and we pass, and you don't see one person on the street. You don't see one wagon with the horses. You don't see a soul. We go through a village. Dogs are barking somewhere in the house. It's dark. And we don't see anybody come, you know, just to look. And we go, and then an SS next to me, obviously a new SS, you know, had a little rucksack, you know. He says, "Du Langer, the tall one, you know, come here. He says, "Take it." I took it on. I said, "Oh my God, I cannot carry myself." It suddenly becomes darker, and you can imagine that it's a movement. And you can hardly see the SS, you can hardly see me. I stop, I'm standing. People going, he is going. I take off this rucksack, I open it up, I'm nervous. I take out salami, you know, piece of salami. I shove it in a belt. I throw it down, and I hear, "Du Langer, wer bist du? Where are you?" I mean, if I would know English, I would tell him something. I didn't. I didn't know because I couldn't carry not my weight. So anyway, after half an hour, suddenly the command comes, halt, stop. Rechtsum, right turn, we turn right. Meantime, it's drizzling. All thing what we have, all together what we gave us when we marched at the gate, a blanket. So we put it around our neck. Okay, here it says the next command was march. There is a meadow, it's raining, it's drizzling. You see these glittering poodles, you know. It wasn't a dog, poodles, you know. And here we go and march. And when we're in the middle of it, the next command is, go down. There was a slight hesitation, you know, because here is a poodle. Okay, sit down, lay down. You want to think of it. So the shots rang out straight. In 2 seconds, we were downstairs, down the group, in the groups of 4 to 6, huddling, shivering, not praying, whatever. In the meantime, in the beginning, I ate my portion. Most of everybody else. Why? Because they snatched away. If somebody had the strength, they snatched it away from you and ran away and ate it. Go and open his mouth. Okay. So here we are, And basically, we are laying down, and the next morning, a lot of people cannot get up. The SS made sure that they are dead. And they weren't able to take them back because that wasn't counting, wasn't anymore. So we continued to go. You can imagine how hard. And we go, and we go, and we go. Suddenly, I see a familiar face. A younger man, I was 20. He might have been 16. He was there when he was 14. And he is still alive, you know. Here I meet him. He looks at me, I look at him. And we couldn't even lift our hand just to shake or whatever. And he says, I can't do it anymore. I said, I can do it much longer. But I cannot do it. I'm going to sit down. I said, for God's sake, don't sit down. This guy in Ordruf, which was not far, came to me because when I came home, and he said, I'm in bad shape. And I was in a room that was shivering, that was cold before freezing. Comes to me. Happened so that my guy didn't come back. Come with me, took me in a warm room. There were some Russians there. They brought some a little bit more organized. They smuggled in something. The chimney was working. Gave me some Russian stockings up to here from the Russian government. He gives me, okay, and it doesn't say anything. And I go to work, come back, and after a while it disappears. Here I meet him. I said, I cannot go. I said, for God's sake, don't do it. He said, I cannot do it. I said, let's do something else. Let me take off your shoes. Winter, remember? It's raining. I tied it, I put it on my shoulders, and we march and we support each other, and we march and support. Finally, we go through a huge city of Weimar. The Thuringia, Weimar is a huge city. 60, 70, 80,000 people, I don't know. We come to the city, not a soul on the street, not a soul. And we like a kettle smelling from far. I'm sure. We come to a certain like a tenement, like apartment house, okay? And we march through a district where there are some shops, and I see windows, big windows. And I look left and I see strange characters. A guy who is bone and skin looking at me, and I realize it's me. I have never seen myself for years or whatever for a long period of time. And I says, oh my God. I continue going in Weimar, we're going to the tenement house. A woman is either took out trash or whatever, she runs back home. She brings a little wooden box, runs on the street, puts the box down, runs back. Meantime we're marching, and we discover that these are carrots and potatoes, and we, like animals, we run. But before we reach the point, that it says, beat us away, beat us and beat us. Nobody got a carrot. Big deal. We march through Weimar, a huge city, not a person inside. We're coming out of Weimar. And here, maybe it was part of a Thuringian Wald, which is the big forest. Here we go in a wide street, modern wide street. On both sides, huge trees. And I said to myself, and it was raining. It kept on raining, drizzling. Rain, not pouring, drizzling. I said to myself, if only these trees could speak. And I don't know whether I had at that time in mind that at one time the Germans believed in trees as their gods or whatever, I don't know. But it was like shh, and you heard no speech, nothing. Everybody trying to concentrate, to put one foot in the next foot. And only you heard the shots. And I looked back, And I didn't have to look back. I have seen the end. I have seen dead bodies for as far as I could see. Dead bodies. And here we go and marching and marching and marching into Buchenwald. That was in 1945, maybe beginning, or so. We come in, there is an Appellplatz, the Appellplatz. We go to the Appellplatz, they take us there, they don't have the space. They don't have the space because it was sort of from every direction they're marching into larger places. They took us there, left us alone. We collapse on the floor, we fall asleep. It's still drizzling, and we slept well. And then they came us and woke us up. They finally found some space. They didn't have a regular space. They took us in a warehouse of lumber and 2x4s and et cetera, et cetera. Huge stacks, a huge lumber hall. That was then. Now, we stayed there for 2 or 3 days. We didn't get to eat since we left Krawinkel. For 2 additional days, we were locked in. Then they opened the door, burst open, and dragging and hollering. A lot of people couldn't make it. Okay, and we come out, and they say in a row, but everybody is hungry. When they see the food, everybody is pushing. They're pushing. The guy doesn't want to go, but being pushed. And then here the SS comes. They picked up rods, not even just a small sum. Picked up the rods, and they started to beat everybody. And believe me, a lot of people didn't get to eat because they couldn't even get up. And there were some instances, I told you, that some people couldn't get up. So some people were leading these people to get their portion, so they have it, but many times it was taken away because they felt this guy doesn't need it anymore. It happens so that many times, whether they need it or not, the son was snatched away food from the father, and father snatched away food from the son. But a lot of people helped each other. So that was on the negative side. So basically, we are right now, after we ate, they locked us in again. Our job was to really find the lice and to start to destroy them. Doesn't sound very good, but no matter what we did, it was so many of them. There's no way that we could do it. But we were scratching, we were sick, we were tired, we didn't know what to do, but here we were.
We need to stop and change the tape.
Okay.
Tape 8, the interview with David Mandl. You're now in Buchenwald.
Okay. We arrived to Buchenwald. We are in this hall there, lumber, 2x4s, people finding place wherever they could squeeze on top of the lumber, 2x4s, high, low, wherever they could find a space. Due to I guess, to circumstances that Americans and Russians, whoever they were pushing and winning the war, perhaps, they were consolidating and more people came. But at one point, there wasn't any place to go anymore or marching. Basically, they were trying to also liquidate Buchenwald, and there was a plan which we didn't know what is the plan, but it was announced that food is not going to be given anymore unless we get to the gate and march out. And I made myself a promise that I don't care if they cut me to pieces, if they shoot me or whatever they want to do, I'm not moving. However, I'm not going to say, come on and shoot me. I wanted to think what I'm going to do. And I decided, and actually it was so, that were thousands and thousands, people. I don't know whether it was 30, 40, 50,000 or more people, and they had a certain capacity to march out a certain number of people during so many hours. So when they announced to the gates, went to the gates, and there were people who were making sure that everybody's marching to the gates. Now I figured what I'm supposed to do. So I said I don't want to go no matter what. So I figured I'm going to sort of try to dance. I went 5 steps front, 3 steps, or 7 steps. I kept on going and not going. It was difficult because people are watching us. So, I mean, I was trying to do it, just be in the middle and do it. It was very tiresome, and I cannot tell you how tiresome it was. And luckily, I was able to do it for 2 days. When approximately, I don't know, 5,000 or 6,000 people went out, a whistle was blowing, and that was the end. Everybody could return because there was no place to return. Third day, it continued. Less people marching, more visibility. I don't know what I'm going to do because too many people are watching. I said, I don't know what else to do. There were a lot of dead people around. I said, I am going to be dead. It sounds funny. I went and I lay down on the side, and I opened my eyes, and I looked like that for sure. And I was there for hours and hours and hours, hollering, etc., etc. Almost to the end. Suddenly, a German supervisor, I can see had a green criminal, you know, you can see a political criminal, green. From Germany, wasn't Jewish, doesn't matter, you know, doesn't matter. He comes, looks at me, and he says in German, nobody fooled me yet, because I know if somebody is dead. And I stared, I didn't blink, and then he had a big stick, when I say big, and he started to swing, okay? I was lucky, because there were similar dead people like me, and we started to scramble, and he didn't know who to hit first, so he was able to run out. I ran out, and I went slowly as I could, and suddenly the whistle was blowing. And that was the end of the march, because there was no place to go anymore. The Americans were coming closer. Next 2 or 3 days, we didn't get to eat 3 days. Another 2 or 3 days we didn't get to eat, because we didn't march, we didn't get to eat. At this point, there wasn't even water. They closed all the water. We didn't have water. I wasn't strong enough. I went inside of a building, and I lay down in a narrow bed. There was on top of me somebody, and I don't know whether I knew exactly what's happening. And there were some people who were a little bit in better shape, and I heard reports. The guards, we were afraid. I mean, everybody was afraid they're going to blow us up, they're going to take us to murder, whatever. I'm saying it because it's just our feelings, not because I didn't see that. So we were watching, somebody was watching the guards. I mean, are they coming, are not coming? So suddenly somebody was reporting, and I'm not sure I did hear it well. He said, the guards are leaving their posts. An hour, 2, 3, I'm up, I'm not up, I'm in daze, and suddenly he says, the Americans are here. I couldn't jump up, I couldn't move, I couldn't go out, you know. The guy on top of me did his whatever it was. Anyway, the point is that I was liberated and took another, and they brought some food. Somebody brought me a little bit. I couldn't eat. Luckily, I couldn't eat. because a lot of people died because they couldn't stop and they just died. So basically, it took another 2 days when the Americans came and they were dragging us. There were 20,000 sick people, 20,000, not 1,000, not 500. So they had military huge tents set up, but before they took us to the tent, 2 people came and picked me up, on their arms, and they dragged me to a shower and tried to wash me, okay? Then they carried me to this tent and put me in a bed, and there was not much that they did for me because they gave me a little bit to eat. That was the prescription. And again a little bit to eat, rest, and a little bit more to eat, and rest. 6 weeks later, I went to the doctor, which was an officer, and I asked him, look here, I would like to go home to Czechoslovakia. So he says, look here, I would love for you to go back. He says, but I'm looking at you, and if a wind would blow, it would blow you away. So stay for a while. So I stayed another 2 weeks, 4 weeks, I don't know anymore. In the meantime, I still had I didn't have any clothing, nothing. One day they put us on a bus, and we wound it up in Prague. The bus stopped in a school. They took us in the gym. There was nothing on the floor in the gym. They gave us 2 blankets. They told us that some stations in Prague, they had about 3 or 4 stations, main stations. The Masaryk was the first president. So the station of Masaryk was named after him. They give you, in the morning, they give you an egg and a bread, and lunchtime you such a station. So we were busy just traveling, because traveling was free because we didn't have money. From one station to another, we didn't have time to even to think what to do with our new life. We were free. Freedom came. That's it.
What did you do?
What I didn't have anybody, of course, in Prague. I was wandering the streets, looking, I was hungry, and suddenly food to me, and I stopped. I remember it was so funny. Stopped in a place, very inexpensive hot dogs, place, and the smell, I was just staring. I didn't have 2 cents. I didn't know what to do. So a guy came, and he looks at me. He says, come on in, come on. He takes me in. What do you want? I said, a soup. Soup, he orders me a hot dog. I says, and gave me a couple korun's, he says, God bless you, and left. So, God bless him. Anyway, so then I didn't know, we didn't know what to do. I mean, you couldn't even think. Then they said that if you go maybe to Jewish agency, you get a card and they stamp you get $5, and maybe a week later, I didn't know where to go. I didn't know what to do. So I walk on the streets of Prague, and somebody stops me, a girl. I says, aren't you from Kasha? He says, yes. He says, I know you from somewhere. It was familiar, a girl. I said, my father is here, and all the bridges were bombed, so there wasn't any trains, nothing. He says, we have a truck right now that we hired, and we are looking for some people to come back to Košice. I said, look here, I'm sorry, I don't have 2 cents. He says, don't worry about it. When you will have money, you're going to give it to me back. Don't worry about it. So we went, and we traveled a long time because every time the Russians were there, they stopped us for inspection to check our papers, And we came. I mean, the father was there, was sick, and he could move, so, that was the benefit. When we came to Košice, and I says, where I am going to go right now? I mean, I don't have a home. So I went to the house of my aunt, and I went to the house that we lived, and I knocked on the door, and a woman opened the door. I says, I lived here, you prepare me the bath, And she was stunned. She said, here's the bathroom, take a shower. She gave me a soap, she gave me a towel. I came out, so I said, I would like to see what's left. She didn't let me in. Why? because that was a woman who, there was, whatever her profession was, there was a market, and she had a stall there, and they auctioneered, and they bought something, whatever's inside, for 2,000 crowns, whatever, or penge, what, I don't know what money. She didn't want to let me in because I would have seen the furniture that existed there. So I'm not going to fight. I felt better. I went out, and I looked around. There was nothing, not even a shirt, a sock, nothing. Yeah. So I said, what am I going to do right now? So I understood that somebody came back a couple blocks away, a neighbor, and I went there. I knew their children, good friends. I went there. The name was Stein, and nobody don't remember, S-T-E-I-N. There was a family that were very friendly, and they basically always welcomed anybody who wants to come. I come there, the children didn't come back, and I come back, they were surprised. They said, stay here, eat here, and you can stay as long as you want. And I stayed there for a couple of days, and then basically I was able to find a little bit to sleep somewhere else and go to a soup kitchen, soup kitchen, and eat there. And from then on, I basically was trying to get something going. I didn't know what to do. I really didn't know what to do. What is my next step? Go to Prešov, where I was born? I didn't know because I didn't have 2 cents. I'm walking the streets, and suddenly I meet a neighbor who was a tenant, on the house of my and his name was Dr. Kaufman. He was the doctor, and he has a brother, Kaufman, and he has another brother who was an artist, And he says, you know what? I went in your home, and all the furniture is there. You have the hotel, the hotels, you have the armchairs, and this and that. I said, if I were you, I said, look here, I don't have a place. So basically, there was a daughter from this Birnbaums, and she calls me from Žilina, different, and she says, I just wanted to somehow somebody told her that I'm there. She got in touch and says, I would like to come to Košice because I know that my parents maybe they were hiding some money for us, and maybe we can meet. And she came, and basically I knew one spot, and that one shows you a little bit of my character, because I could have done it myself. I didn't do it. I knew that my aunt and myself and the brother Shamu didn't come back. We took a sort of when you have a headache, you put a little bit back with an ice. So they stuffed some dollars, and it was. And we went on the top floor, where the attic there's nothing on its construction. There was dust, nothing else, and the dust was like this, between the rafters, and we were looking for a sign to recognize it, how to find it, and there was a sign. There's a little door, so I dug a little bit hole. I put it back. I figured it's not going to be there anymore. I was there for a couple of weeks, and she comes from out of town, and she says, "You think that you remember?" I says, "Let's go." We sneaked in the staircase. We go in, and I wasn't sure where it is, but finally walked, finally see this little, sign, and I dig, and there it is. I give it to her, and she got a bellyache. And I guess she felt that was very unusual what I did. I don't know, she felt. So later on, besides, when we had a store, we also were involved in producing shirts, and we gave out work to sewing, for the private homes. And I was the one who was cutting it, I was cutter, and I was delivering it. I was picking it up. I was, operation in one. And basically, I remember that before we left, we gave a lot of merchandise to each one, and we got whatever we could, hoping that we come back, we'll find something. So I went and made my trips. And most of them, the Russians came in, they took everything. But one woman, he says, yes, your aunt gave me some money. And I said, well, I don't want to, but she told me that I should get some money. You know, she remembered it, not to my daughter, but I should get a part. And she gave me some money, not much. And she gave me an old suit of chamus, you know. It didn't fit me, that was different. And I was a little bit in my pocket, and I came, and okay, so that's in the story. So when the Roji, the daughter of my aunt, the sister of Shamu, came, living in Zilina, we went, and she went away, and later on she says, well, I would love to have my parents' furniture, because it's a, not that she was a well-to-do person, by the way. So I was trying to figure, what am I supposed to do? So I went back again to these people. I said, look here, I came back. This doesn't belong to me. Maybe it belongs because you bought it. But let me give you back the money that you paid for. And look here, how fair can I be? I don't want to do anything else, because I don't know what to do. I want to. So they were very sneaky, in my opinion, didn't say anything. Okay, do it. I didn't know, or I didn't care, that at that point you had to have a permission to move anything from a room, because everybody was taking, you know, so you had to have a piece of paper, which I would have gotten easily. But I said, what do you mean? It's my furniture. Who is going to tell me? I didn't know that. So when we were loading everything, and I went with the furniture, was trying to join the driver, suddenly from behind a door, a guy came in. I says, I'm Detective so-and-so. Do you have the permit? I says, what permit? He said, you don't have it? Here is the ticket. And they took away the furniture. They took it, didn't give it to her back, okay? But she was the one who, okay. They took it in a warehouse, and basically I got a ticket. Now this is the story carefully. I got a ticket. I show you something. I got a ticket. I go because I'm guilty, okay? So supposedly. I go there. I open the door. This is the room, and I'm supposed to say I'm here because I didn't have the permit. I'm looking at the prosecutor. He looks at me, and we jump out, and we hug each other. And this was the guy that I went out every week almost for a hike, okay? And he was at that time starting to be a lawyer. He obviously finished something. He came back early. He didn't even go. He went with this Edelman sister, remember? The group, they went together.
He was Jewish?
Yeah, he went, remember, and I talked about that group. We came back. He says, what's the matter with you? I says, look here, I went to try to, I didn't know. He got angry, emotional. He says, hold it. He called, get me 2 policemen. He says, get and pick up this guy right away. And he was brought to the police station. He was in a jail. And he was told, that's not your furniture. They weren't even talking about giving back the money. It's not your furniture. But actually, I gave him the money, remember? So he says, you, unless you give back the 2,000, whatever I gave was foreign to, I don't remember anymore. You're not going out from the jail. He did give me back the money. Fine, I have the furniture. I'm just trying to tell you that, crazy. I go and I look for the warehouse for the furniture, can't find it. I can't find the furniture. It was so beautiful, somebody wanted to have it. I go home, and next day, or a couple of days later, I walk on the street, I'm finished in a minute, and here goes a heavy truck with heavy, we call it Belgian horses, you know, because like a trucking company, the heaviest horses. And here's the furniture. On this and they walk so slowly, I could faster. I continue following. It goes in the apartment house, second floor. I look at the name. I mark down the name. I go to the warehouse. I said, look here, I see my furniture was delivered somewhere. Uh-oh, that's my boss. I mean, not the lawyer, I mean the chief boss. So I said, look here, I want the furniture. I said, you're going to get it back, okay? So finally I got the furniture back. I packed it and I sent it to my cousin, Roji, her name is Rosalia Roji, to Zilina, and she used it for a long time. And I went back to Prešov.
How much longer were you in Czechoslovakia?
Well, I was for Czechoslovakia for a long time. Okay, so I went to Prešov. I've seen my sister. I became sick, and suddenly I got a call from Zilina Roji. I understand you don't have a job, whatever. We have 2 stores here because they had some department stores. Very good, well-to-do people. We need a manager. I want you to be. She trusted me. I want you to get involved. I came over there. There were some partners. I didn't like anybody inside there. We don't need anybody. She found me a job. She went and she had a lot of friends. And I worked for a company of a distributorship of the cars, and they had a shop, and I was in the office writing invoices, blah, 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 this, etc. Then I decided what I'm going to do in Czechoslovakia. I was supposed to go in a couple of months for military duty, and I could have gotten an extension after I was in concentration camp. I said, I don't have to do it because I want to go to Palestine. I was told I have to go for training for 4 weeks. I left for a training. I went for a training. I trained 2-3 weeks. We were told, pack everything, go to Bratislava, Pressburg, which is the main city of Slovakia. And we were supposed to go illegally through the border to Austria. We come to Bratislava, to the office. Sorry, they closed the border, cannot go. It was a couple of days or a week before I had to go to the army. I had to go to the army. I went to the army. I got the training for 6 months. They felt that I have abilities. They sent me to certain schools. I was sent to the school. The basic training we finished. I went to the school. They sent me from Slovakia to Czechia, and I went to a school, and I came in the school the second best. So then the captain who was conducting the class came to me. You know what? You deserve to be the first. It's funny. But because you are Slovak and you are in Czechia, I have to give it to a Czech. Okay, politics. Then I basically was 18. I was close to 2 years, actually. 2 years there, and I was counting the days to get out. Suddenly, it was 1946 and 1946. No, actually, I was until 48, you know. And suddenly I get a letter from the Joint, which is the Jewish organization help. It's, I get a letter, dear Mr. So-and-so, whatever. We need help. Palestine is in trouble. We have a meeting. Could you come and we have to discuss certain things. I go there, and there are a lot of previous soldiers with experience. They've considered I have the experience, which I did, but some people had experience from the war, and it was decided, after all, that we're going to put together a Jewish brigade of 3,000 people. We will train them for 6 weeks in all branches. We will get from the government all the equipment. They were pro-Palestine because it was a socialistic state with the kibbutzim, and this became communistic. So we got German villages to train these Jewish people for 6 weeks. It was empty. We trained them. We came to Israel, and basically I stayed in the army there. The war was sort of over. There was the Independence Day. I came a bit late, but I was 18 months in the Israeli army. I was a sergeant, and anytime there was promotion, it says, I would like you to sign for 5 years, and we can promote you. I can send you in a officer's school, blah, blah, blah. I said, I'm sorry, I love the army. I loved what I did. I volunteered. I was also in the Sinai campaign. I volunteered, but I have to go out. I don't want to be, I want to try the civilian life. I came out, before I came out from the army, walking in Tel Aviv, up and down. It was social. You meet everybody. Somebody introduced me to a person. His name was Sinai. And he was a builder. He was there for years and years. He was established. And he asked me a question. What's your name? I said, my name is Mandl. I'm from Prešov. He says, no kidding. I worked for your dad. I had a job there, you know. And suddenly he says, look here, you're coming out. You know what you're going to do? I says, I don't know. Why don't you come and let me train you for the buildings, like a profession. And I was thinking, there's so many people are coming. You cannot get a corner, a room for any price. I figured it's going to be a good potential for me to continue and maybe develop something that I can finally live like a mensch.
We need to stop and change.
Okay.